We can start without Dave? Yeah. All right, so we're officially back into open session. The first item on the agenda is public comment, legal right. I have to preside today in the absence of Dr. Miller, so if I do anything out of order, please let me know. It's not my normal role. Yes, the sign-in sheet, and Margie's getting the sign-in sheet, so. Oh, there's a lot. All right, we have a active public comment tonight. So I'll call your name. If you can just come up, say your name and where you live, and then let us have your comment. So the first person is Katie Walsh.
Hello. My name's Katie Walsh, and I live in Hollywood. I'm just here to talk about transfers. My daughter was transferred to Central. So I grew up in Hollywood most of my life, and I attended Hollywood School. I was class of 1990. So did my sister. Our late mother, Karen Bettine, was the PTA president for many, many years. We have a great attachment to the school, so much so that I convinced my husband that we should leave Ireland and raise our family where I was raised. We bought our home when our daughter was almost 2, and we were so excited to have her be a part of our family history at Hollywood School. We even bought trees to be planted on the Hollywood House property, and have helped out with many fundraisers. In essence, we are already a part of Hollywood School and its future. When we received the letter that Ruby's been placed at Central, you can imagine we were very disappointed. Our plan has always been to have Ruby to be picked up from school with the other children she's at daycare with, who all attend Hollywood School. I work full-time, and I'm unable to pick her up myself. I'm not sure what options I would have. Central is not walkable for a young child from the south side of Hollywood. For 3 years, we've been sending her to this sitter who lives in Hollywood and watches all 5 of her grandchildren, all older than our daughter, who all attend Hollywood School. Ruby's been attending events alongside them and is even known by many students at the school because of her presence there. She's attended the Parents' Night Out fundraiser, sock hops, bake sales, field days, concerts, the holiday shop. She's been patiently or impatiently waiting for her turn to be a true Hollywood student. We've been putting up with when do I get to go to Hollywood for at least 2 years. I cannot imagine the disappointment on my 5-year-old's face if I had to tell her she can't attend Hollywood too. She will not understand the reasons why. She will only feel rejected and left out. She will not be consoled by policies or capacities or the vague excuse that it will balance other classes out. Our daughter is a real person with feelings and is not here for the purpose of keeping the playing field even for others. Her individual being matters, and it's my job to see that that happens. I'm very aware that it's not just my child, but many children that are at the heart of decisions like this. I've outlined all the negative ways this will affect my child and our family, but I do not believe that our daughter attending Hollywood would have any negative effects on other children in her class or her school. Ruby's a well-behaved, kind-hearted individual that's everyone's friend. My husband and I are asking that Ruby be transferred to Hollywood because it is the right thing to do, and it is her school. Sending her to another school would be the same as kicking her out of a school she is already a part of. For her, for our family, and for her class, keeping her at Hollywood is the right decision. And I promise you that we are not the only ones that stand behind these thoughts. Many other Hollywood families and people do as well. I would like to think that we are a district that can look beyond black and white rules and do what is best for the children, all the children. I'm learning that it is a common concern of families that their firstborn might not get into Hollywood School. This is not right. What are we doing to fix this problem? Displacing children to schools that will alienate them from their home base and their immediate community is wrong. My daughter and everyone else deserves this chance to get to know the kids in her neighborhood at school, to get to know kids that live somewhere she can cycle or walk to. It's time the district takes notice that Hollywood School is special. We deserve a school that will accept all of our children and that will do whatever it takes to accommodate them, create more space, hire more teacher assistants. My husband and I hope to lead this charge in any way we can. Please understand that the decision to force Ruby into another school would cause her and our family devastation that far outweighs the benefits it would have for other kids. Please do not use my child as a lesson a hard line in the sand, or a tipping point. Do not use her to arbitrarily even out classroom numbers across the board. She is a precious little human that just wants to stay where she belongs, at Hollywood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Brian Walsh. Oh, good. Okay. So we will move on. Abbie Troyer.
My name is Abbie Troyer. I'm from Brookfield in the Hollywood district. And I just want to say good evening. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight. I am here also advocating to lift the enrollment cap on Hollywood Elementary's incoming kindergarten class. My son, Harvey, is one of few incoming kindergartners in Hollywood Elementary, and that was assigned to Central Elementary. Both are amazing schools. I'm not here to argue that point tonight, but rather just say that you've built a desirable school system. But Hollywood is our primary school, and it's one of the main reasons we chose to live where we do, and we want to attend it. Our concerns are as follows. Sibling priority. So not only does Harvey not get to go to his primary school, but our two younger daughters will not get priority there either. Our only options are to continue attending board meetings or meeting with Martha or requesting transfers year after year that may or may not ever be granted. Safety is another concern. Not only did our walking distance double, and without a bus system, but we must also cross First Avenue, and that's okay for junior high, but it's not okay for elementary. I understand there are crossing guards, but there's a significant difference between helping kids cross busy neighborhood streets and crossing a 4-lane highway during rush hour. Another concern is enrollment. We were one of the first families to enroll on recommendation from the district, and I believe that should be taken into account first to secure a seat in the classroom before the algorithm kicks in. In doing that, there's continued emphasis for families on the importance and critical nature of registering early and on time. Another issue is communication. Being a new family in the district and having only lived in Hollywood for 2 years, we had no idea that our son would be placed into this algorithm. We were completely caught off guard. So to me, somewhere there's a breakdown in communication. So giving families a heads up that they're even slightly at risk of not getting into the neighborhood school, whether by letter or email or phone call, should be standard practice. Because now, with only a few weeks left before the school year, this new placement has put our family in a logistical scramble. And we understand that this is a complex problem, balancing and maintaining the uniqueness of a small school with a growing community. And we know this because we live in the middle of it. But we believe Hollywood Elementary, their principal and their staff are uniquely suited to manage the community growth. And we believe that you know this as well. Otherwise, the school would either be failing or it would cease to exist. But instead, there are parents like me and community members like me advocating for what's best for the school and for our little neighborhood and its continued success, which to me means not dividing our neighborhood kids. And so again, we're asking you to please not take away our dream of walking Harvey to Hollywood Elementary on his first day of kindergarten and lift the enrollment cap this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Troyer. Next, Matthew Wendell. I don't know if I said that right. Sorry.
That's perfect. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
My name is Matthew Wendell. I'm a resident of Hollywood. My oldest daughter attends Hollywood Elementary. I wish I had prepared a speech. My youngest daughter is entering into the kindergarten class, and she'll be directly affected by your decision. I don't know Kate or Abbie, but I think that my daughter will in no way be negatively affected by their kids entering her class, and it probably will be a positive for my daughter. I should have had a speech. My oldest daughter is going into 4th grade. She has 24 students in her grade. I don't believe that her life or her academic success has been affected in any negative manner whatsoever. I hope that you'd consider lifting the cap for these people. I can't imagine what they're going through. I've never met these people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Matt Johnson.
My speech, so we're just going to read right off of that. Hello, my name is Matt Johnson, and I've been a Hollywood resident for 6 years. I have a daughter, Olivia, going into first grade, another daughter, Emmy, going into kindergarten, and a son, Finnegan, that will enter kindergarten in a few years. I've come here tonight to advocate for raising the class size for the incoming kindergarten class. I know that this is an extremely important and sensitive issue with no easy solution in sight. While it may sound strange hearing someone say, yes, put more kids in my daughter's class, I've come here tonight to say exactly that. Everything that the Hollywood neighborhood and school have to offer to its residents is part of a mostly lost part of American culture, certainly lost in the suburbs, a true neighborhood. Everything that the Hollywood neighborhood and school have to offer, Hollywood offers that experience for us and our children, and the benefits of that kind of upbringing are immeasurable. Creating and fostering a close-knit community where members watch out for each other and the children of the community is not easy today, but we have it. It would be easy for my wife and I to say, well, we got our oldest into Hollywood, so what do we care? We're good. But we want our kids, our neighbors and friend kids, and the children of people in the neighborhood that we haven't had the chance to meet yet to be together. I formerly taught high school social studies in the Inglewood and Roseland neighborhoods. I'm extremely aware of the challenges that larger class sizes pose to educators. I've also seen just in 1 year as a Hollywood parent the magic that that building has to offer. Having one's child go to a classroom full of smart, caring kids that come from good, loving families is a desire we all have. Personally, knowing the Walsh and Troyer families, I can easily say that their absence in the classroom will be a loss for the class itself and the school as a whole. I will close by reiterating that I am asking the district to put more children in my daughter's incoming kindergarten class at Hollywood Elementary because I believe it is the right thing to do, and I don't doubt for a second that the pros of that decision will greatly outweigh the cons. Thank you for your time and the energy you put into being members of the school board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all for your public comment. I'm sure that Martha will be following up. Absolutely. With you soon. So, thank you. Moving on, the next item is changes or additions to the agenda. Does any board member have any changes or additions to the agenda they would like to add?
No changes.
Nope. All right. Next is the superintendent's report. Martha?
And it starts with enrollment. So I have an update for the board, and there's a revised, updated that's attached, and it's actually publicly available information. In particular, certainly looking at the enrollment across the district. As you know, this year with our kindergarten and our first grade students, we used our assignment algorithm. It's really not the algorithm that moved kids across First Avenue. It's really the enrollment and the balance of enrollment. It would have been done sort of by hand or with the algorithm. I actually think the algorithm helped us have more of an organized approach to it all. So parents here giving public comment have absolutely followed our process. We have a transfer request process. So I'll be looking at transfer requests here. Really wanted to get past this particular board meeting and have a sense from the board if there's any comment that board members wanted to share, not specifically to the families that have given public comment, but just about our enrollments overall. What you have in front of you is a sense of sort of where we're growing and where we're not. I think it always feels this year like we're growing a whole lot, and yet our total numbers district-wide are actually down 17. A lot of that is at the middle school level. We know we had kind of a particular bubble. You see there, the chart you have in front of you gives you kind of a comparison to last year at this time in each grade level in each school and district-wide. So perhaps the sky really isn't falling. It's just that we have, kind of unique bubbles and bumps in particular situations, and we have a good mechanism to address that. So, but we do know that we get a healthy number of kindergartners, and we also know that we get a good number of new first graders. There's certainly a sense that is part of not having a full-day kindergarten program, that families go elsewhere for a full-day kindergarten and then come here when they are ready to do full-day first grade. So it's always an interesting problem to have care very much about the children, and I know the whole board really values the neighborhood school concept. So balancing class size and honoring the neighborhood schools is a unique challenge, and it's certainly something that I'll be reviewing carefully. But wanted you to have an update. I'm not asking for any waivers of class size at this point in time. I anticipate asking for some waivers of class size at the August board meeting, and that really is across the board. We already are above the 20 by like 21. Even at Hollywood, it's a question of, how beyond the class size we may go, and that's a decision that I'll really have to weigh and consider here in the next few weeks. So any comments? I just really wanted to give everybody an update at this point, and then we'll be coming to you with recommendations for waivers in a month, even based on where we are currently.
Any comments on that? My only comment would be that I've been in the district I've lived here 11 years, and every year the enrollment situation is just crazy. And, every year there's something different. And I know as a board, the last few years, we've really tried to make it a smoother, cleaner process. And I mean, clearly it doesn't always work. So I'm very, sympathetic to your situations. And I just am starting to think, and this is something I've mentioned before, is like, we have this unique neighborhood schools where 2 are larger, 2 are smaller, one's across a busy highway. It's different. So as we move forward, maybe some of our decision making and our policies need to be reflective of the uniqueness of each place, because it really is a difference moving across First Avenue than moving from Blythe to Central. Like there's a difference to that. So I'm just, as a board, maybe that's something we need to be thinking about. Well, we have to have a class size policy. We have to have parity. We don't want one's, for financial reasons and for other reasons, you don't want to have one classroom that's 15 and one's 25, I just think that it needs to be thought through more as we move through this. I feel like we've spent a lot of time on it, but I think the situation kind of grows and gets more complex as we move forward. So I would just recommend that something else we could think about. I don't know if that's under the policy committee, but those are just my 2 cents.
I'm glad you said that, Linda. But I would approach it a little differently, and that's not from just an insensitive board, but I think it's a new situation every year. Every year it's a new situation. So while I think our policy can guide us, I think we have to listen to what our superintendent recommends, and then advise our superintendent as to what we think is the right move.
Yeah, no, and you are right. It is a new problem, a new situation of the same overall problem. So you're absolutely right.
This is a difficult situation. I understand your plight. I live in Hollywood myself. I understand your plight. That was a concern when we moved in. It's like, was our daughter going to get into Hollywood? But the thing is, the class size at Hollywood for kindergarten is, I think, 26, was it? If we were to open it, if like everyone to go there, wasn't it 25 or 26?
It's at 21 right now.
All right, 21, but if those who want to go to Hollywood, it would be a lot higher. If I remember the number of... So there's a lot of kids that are being transferred. And so I guess my question is, and to your point, Linda, it's like, how do we decide? Clearly that's too high for a kindergarten class. How do we decide who gets transferred, who doesn't? That's just a delicate thing.
In a perfect world, we wouldn't transfer anybody.
Right.
Right? And that's what we want to aspire to, but our facilities and our policy don't allow us to do that right now.
Right.
So we have to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
And that's a good point, Rich. And looking at it case by case, and policy serves as a guide. And I think as we continue to look at it, we know that the Blythe and Hollywood principals have a slightly different perspective on class sizes than the larger schools, and we need policies that keep that in mind and have sufficient flexibility that can address each new year as it comes, rather than a boilerplate fit the square peg into the round hole. I know that's not an answer, but flexibility is primary, I think.
Any other comments? Otherwise, I'll move on to my.
No, I do. I mean, I want to echo what Linda said. I think it's important that you came in and expressed yourselves.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate you
Thank
doing
you.
that.
The other thing I just wanted to share some information about is summer school. Kim Hefner is our summer school principal, along with being the Hollywood school principal, and Merrill, sort of through the district office, also supports and helps facilitate the kinds of classes and programs that are put in place. And so there's a memo shared there. Summer school is going on right now, July 16th to August 9th. Classes running from 8:30 to 11:45, and you have information in front of you about the kinds of enrichment classes that are going on, as well as the student support classes. And enrollment is up this year in summer school, so 299 students, which is an increase of 128 students since 2017, so just in a year. And then we talk about number of seats, which is really the number of kids who enroll in a specific class. So sometimes if kids take 2 classes, right, they're counted twice. So that's why that number varies. But 299 students in attendance, significant number.
Yeah,
So,
that's pretty impressive.
and those are my 2 superintendent's report items.
All right. Any comments on that? All right, moving on, we're going to do the approval of the consent agenda. Just for clarification, to make sure I'm right, we read the consent agenda and then decide if anything needs to be pulled off. All right, so I'm going to ask the board secretary to read the consent agenda.
Tonight's consent agenda includes the minutes of the previous meeting, which were June 20th of this year, the personnel report, the payables pre-lists of June 30th and July 18th, the closed session minutes of the previous 6 months, and this is a motion that the minutes would remain closed, the IASB Press 98 policy revisions, the Issue 98, the IASB Press Issue 98 5-year policy review revisions, and the IMRF notice of appointment of authorized agent as Mr. Jim Fitton.
Is there any of those items that you would like to vote on separately? No? Then I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read. No.
Somebody else can.
I'm asking for a motion, is what
There you
I'm
go.
doing. Yes. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Second.
Margie, can you call the roll?
I'd be happy to. Ms. Murphy,
Aye.
Mr. Regan,
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber,
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi, Mr. Hunt,
Aye.
Mr. Marhold.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right, moving on. Is there anybody from the Riverside Education Council that would like to make comments? Nope. All right, moving on to board member comments. Committee reports. Dan, is there any comments from the policy committee?
Now that the policies were passed in the consent agenda, I have nothing further to add for the policy committee.
All right. Sherry, Education Committee?
We had a little break from our regular meeting, but we'll be meeting very soon to talk about a topic schedule for Committee of the Whole, so we'll be back to you soon, probably the next meeting, to talk about what we're going to talk about for the next year.
All right, great. Finance Committee?
Kind of a similar report to Sherry's. Jim is on the ground. He's in his office. He's got his laptop. He knows where the kitchen is, so that's all good. But more importantly, he's jumped right in, and I think Martha can share this as well, that he's a quick learner. He's jumped into preparing documents with respect to collective bargaining negotiations, and we too are planning upcoming agendas. So more to report very, very soon.
Are there any other board comments at this time? There's not a lot going on during the summer as a parent or board member, so I'm not sure if there's any comments. No? All right, so moving on to old business. See, we're going fast through this one. Just kidding. I shouldn't have said that. Old business, item 1, stipend proposals. Is there a motion for the Board of Education to approve the stipend list for 2018-19 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Martha, your staff prepared this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there I reviewed it, and nothing particularly jumped out at me. Of course, other than what you highlighted. But is there any background you want to share about it?
No, so what the board is, I think, giving that additional approval to is not just the annual stipends that have been in place, at least since the last negotiated agreement, are the ones that are, for the board, they're highlighted in red, and that's the proposals that are coming around unique after-school clubs and activities, so we call them co-curriculars here in District 96. So I feel like the board is explicitly approving some additional expenditures, expenses around those additional clubs and activities.
Yep. Thank you for updating the sheet
Yes.
with the totals. It makes
It's a lot
it's very
easier.
clear.
Formatted,
It's much
okay.
more clear to see that
Okay.
the increase is not what it looked like
Okay,
before. That
good.
it's
Right.
very
Okay.
the modest.
It's really those items in red.
right.
Yeah.
Right. The 1.2% increase as well. Yep.
And this was subject to review by the REC rep as well, is that right?
Yes, right. Went through an REC review
Yeah.
process first, and that comes to the board for consideration and potential approval.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Margie, will you call the roll?
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Marvel?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right, moving on. The second item under old business, the memorandum of understanding for additional projects. Is there a motion for the Board of Education to approve the memorandum of understanding with DLA Architects for additional projects as presented?
I may need some help with this. I'd like to make a motion, but also an addition to the memo. So is that,
Should we,
That should come up in debate.
yeah, so go ahead,
Fair
somebody
enough.
make a motion.
Well, you made the motion. Are you approving? You're,
Did you make a motion?
I'm not, I don't think I can make a motion to
Motion
approve it
to
as it
open discussion,
sits.
wouldn't it
It's just a motion to discuss
To
it.
discuss, yes,
Yeah.
motion to discuss.
second.
Any discussion, Joel?
Sure, thank you for that help. I'm not, I would like to add, as we did with the Ames addition and renovation, that after the October 2018 presentation to the district administration and committee, to also add a school board update presentation. We did the same thing for the Ames edition, where we had an interim presentation before we went to the final presentation 2 months later.
So you're adding a line to the project schedule, is that right?
Yes, which is entitled School Board Update Presentation.
After October,
Yes,
before revisions?
yes.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. Any other additions?
No.
Can I just get a clarification on, so I can get that?
I guess one question, is that going to increase the cost of an additional presentation?
After the October meeting.
Ms. Matlack, I would love for you to answer that question.
They love coming
Yes,
here.
we're going to alter that, we're going to change the cost, and we're going to change the schedule. So that's fine.
And that's what we did with the Ames one too. We actually, I think, ended up changing it by about a month so that we could get the extra presentation.
So what would be the benefit, just for my information, Joel, like what's the benefit of that presentation and then another presentation like a month later?
It's the same as with the addition presentations that we're about to look at later this evening, and that the board has an opportunity to look at these ideas and concepts a little bit earlier in the game and give some additional feedback.
If those preliminary sketches were just shared with the board, because I do feel like maybe what we did with the Ames edition MOU was maybe rushed it a little bit.
Could you
I don't
explain
think it's
that?
rushed.
No. I mean, rush the committee work part of it.
I see what you're saying,
I'm
yeah.
all for more presentations. I'm just saying if we're gonna, like, I'm not sure if it's worth the extra additional money, but I'm certainly not saying we
I'm
should.
not all for more presentations, but where it's effective and necessary, I do support it.
I guess, yeah, my question is, what do we hope to gain out of it?
You have to gain comment before revisions are made publicly.
But the revisions are made it's the committee revision, because then once it gets to the board, there's still going to be tons of revisions made at that level. Just like as with our Ames presentation tonight, it's not like we're just like, this is it and we're choosing one. This is just our first
But
step
there's
of
no
talking.
public opportunity for comment. That's the difference between the committee presentation.
Well, let me ask you, not to sort of slow the process down, but can we just maybe make those sketches available as like an addendum at the end of the meetings that we've done in the past with other things, and just have, make it available for, and if people want to comment, they can comment on it. I'm just afraid, I'm all open for the transparency and keeping things letting people know what we're doing, but I also want to keep this process moving, and
I'm not sure how it slows the process since we're doing the same thing with the Ames renovations.
Carrie just said that we would change the schedule.
Maybe by a month, but we're talking about the, mostly I think the playground revisions, which would be implemented at the earliest the next summer. So I'm not sure that delays our implementation in the future of anything.
I think we also, this isn't on comment of adding a meeting or a presentation. Just make sure we know that this schedule, like it says, may vary depending on input received from the committee, because we are really starting at a ground, at a foundational level. So I don't want to rush the process either by committing to certain dates. So even if we do add the board presentation, I hope that it's still going to be a flexible
I would simply
timeline.
expect that it's in line. It's in the same order that it always was, whether or not it slides a month with the rest of the work is fine.
So
It doesn't feel to me like it especially delays the whole process, and, if a consensus of the board wants an additional presentation, I'm fine with it.
Dan, do you have any thoughts?
Well, like what Rich is saying, I agree with what Joel says, that even if we're delaying it a month, I don't see it delaying the implementation of the overall plan. Now, what the extra cost is, it's unclear. It doesn't seem to me like it would be all that much. Not being on that particular committee, and definitely from a curiosity standpoint, I wouldn't mind seeing more about it when it in an October time frame. At the same point, I'd take what was said about, yes, there will be revisions eventually once we get it in December. In my mind, it comes down to what's the extra cost of adding it in, because I think the time probably is not going to be a big issue there.
Okay.
As a follow-up comment to what you just said, Dan, you guys, the whole board, saw the plans about a couple of days after we saw them, maybe one day after we saw
I don't know if
them.
it was any days.
Actually, it could have been the same day.
It was the same day.
same
It was the
day.
same day.
So from that perspective, you guys saw them when we saw them, as being part of the committee,
Honestly,
which I think is the right way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think to David's point, I think it allows us to also have a board discussion as a whole
Yeah.
in that October timeline. Whereas if there is not a informal or formal presentation that's not that, if there's not a presentation that's not part of the board meeting, then we don't have that opportunity.
Ms. Matlack, would you
I
like?
mentioned that a month is critical during bidding time of the following year, so I think you believe that the plan was to finish up in December with the presentation, and then if we were waiting till January, then instead, and then, depending on your decision-making process, that might put us into February. So I just want you to all be aware that that is a short time frame for bidding for any summer work that would come.
Why does it delay it a month to do a presentation?
Because the schedule that we had, then the next available board meeting would be the following month after we've completed what we needed to complete in, as it was in October, I don't have that in front of me.
Yeah.
Committee update beginning of November after revisions with a preliminary presentation in October.
October, so then we would wait till your November meeting to do the board meeting.
But you were also doing revisions in October as well, so that actually puts, if you need 2 weeks to do revisions, then that still means we're maybe the third week of October, but we're certainly not.
So, don't know how to word what I want to say. The board presentation that you want to insert, what is the expectation of that presentation?
It's the opportunity for us to discuss as a group what we see. And I think that is very important as we talk about.
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
Okay.
I think it's important as we start talking about the long-term goals of the district and some significant financial commitments.
You want an opportunity to comment on it before the December meeting is what you're saying, right?
Yes.
So do we need to
Okay.
do a presentation, or can we just supply materials and have it as
That's what-
an
that's
item
what-
on the agenda?
We probably
and Carrie
could.
can
Well,
be
if
here.
there's someone that can answer questions.
No, that's what I'm saying.
That
That
could
somebody
be
from
a
DLA
COW
could be
meeting.
here
It
to.
doesn't have to be at a full board meeting.
Yes,
Could be
absolutely.
at the cow.
Oh, but, yeah, no, absolutely. It could be so instead of having a presentation per se, it's let's have an update and a discussion
Well, minimum,
of what's
someone
been.
answer questions.
Yeah.
Right. I think that, I'm more in support of that. I think doing two presentations so close together seems a
Yeah.
little heavy-handed in my mind.
Yeah, I just agree with the open discussion in a public place. It's
Yeah.
important, and I don't need a formal
And I do
two-hour
think-
presentation from you. I need someone to answer questions.
No, and I think that's great. And I do think Martha has made it clear in the facilities committee that it's going to be a running line item.
Yeah.
Right.
On the committee report. So that is
Right.
completely where we can have those
I'd be happy with that
conversations.
compromise.
So then are we going to leave the MOU as?
As long as it says school board update, doesn't have to be, could be memo, report, whatever you want to call it.
But, yeah, I agree that it should be written in there somehow.
But it
about
should be
plan.
there.
Sure, you were also talking about it being happening at a public meeting. So
Yeah.
So not just the boards being updated,
Well,
but
what-
actually the
No,
public's
just
being
the
updated.
discussion.
I guess
May I make
I
a
sort of would like to know from Carrie's perspective, doing something we're discussing here, is that still in your term, in your industry?
Same thing to me, doesn't matter to me.
Is it a presentation, or is it? I just want
It's
to.
my time coming here,
All
right?
right.
So that's-
Yeah.
So that's the cost of your
Right.
time.
Yeah, but yeah, I know, we don't need you to make up a whole nother formal presentation. I think that's not valuable use of your time.
So we're basically asking you to come to the,
The November cow potentially?
so we would add that into.
No, I think you still have it in October.
The October.
October, because there's revisions being made
Right.
in October.
Line item number 4 under project schedule, presentation of preliminary discussions to district administration and committee, October 2018. We add circulation to the board on that,
That's easy.
Yes,
and Q&A at the cow.
Q&A, that's fine. Call it
Right?
out.
that's fine.
Be cognizant of the fact that we haven't set a date for that October meeting yet.
So we
Okay.
don't
And
know.
so what the problem was with the MOU last time is that the way that the dates fell for the board meeting and the dates that were available for the committee meeting did not coincide, so that's why it got pushed
Right.
to today. So that's all I'm trying to say.
Right, and I'm thinking about-
We're happy to do whatever you'd like us to do, happy to come and discuss, no problems there, whatever you need, but just be cognizant of that schedule, we're gonna need to set that, so let's not plan a board meeting date for that particular presentation at this time, until we can coordinate all the other dates associated with the project. Is that fair?
So we want to make sure we insert that board update, but I think our dates, I mean, I know you started
Sure.
with a kickoff meeting with kickoff meeting with administration end of July, meetings with focus groups in August. Focus groups are going to involve some staff members that are not even here in the summer. So I mean, I think there's a
Right.
couple things within this that,
Right.
Well,
Great.
They'll come in. They love it.
yeah.
I'm just kidding.
if,
We love to come in and out.
based on that, then even this schedule might not be doable. August 2018 might not happen with the focus group because everyone is trying to get into
Right.
the swing of things in August.
Why can't we call them in?
We could. We also have new teacher mentoring. We have Institute Day. We're
I
still in
know, I
negotiations.
did all that too. I'm just saying it's important.
Right, so I'm just saying we
It's
could, it
important they
depends,
might come.
we haven't really resolved how big, how many people we're inviting to the focus group, so some of those details are still to be worked through, because the MOU hasn't even been approved yet,
Right.
so, yeah.
I guess I'm going to go on the line. I say we just, I'm for approving this as is, so we can keep, because I just want to keep things moving. And I mean, I think we put a lot into this. The facilities team has put a lot into it. I mean, we've sort of trusted them to make a lot of good decisions. I'm not saying we don't abrogate our responsibilities to just take a look at it and provide input on our feedback, but we get it pretty much the same time they do. And so if we have questions or great concerns, we can bring those up.
We can, but the public won't hear them.
No, but we would do it at a board meeting.
Right.
We would,
I realize it. It's a little, as long as it gets done. That's, I don't see why we can't approve it tonight with a quick addition of it.
So we'll call the motion, right?
With the question and answer memo, whatever you want to call it.
well, okay, so do we know what we're adding in?
I would like to make a motion to approve the MOU with the addition of language that allows for discussion and review at a board meeting. After the presentation of the sketches to the district administration and facilities committee.
So,
I'll second it.
So I guess the question is, do we vote on that, or do we vote on the whole thing with the addendum with it? I mean, what, I guess.
I mean,
no, because it's going to affect the overall not to exceed. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so we can't approve this unless we approve it with an edit.
We approved
Right.
the last one with an edit.
An edit.
But we don't know what that edit's going to be.
We approved the last Ames MOU with an edit without
But we don't know what the
additional
not to exceed is going to be. Unless that additional meeting is just T and M, then we approve that
Right,
it's.
if it's a time for them to come here and answer.
And that's
we
what
should
you're
know-
fine with?
We should know what
Okay.
that is.
Then we can.
And I
So
just
then we
want
make
every-
the motion, essentially, I think that's what we did last time, is we worded the motion in such a way that it was a motion to approve the MOU with the additional language
Yes.
of, similar to what Joel just stated.
Yep.
Yeah.
And an understanding that it would be time and materials for the additional time spent
Sure.
by DLA.
Above the not to exceed.
That's fine.
Yep.
so
Second.
are we all clear on the motion? The motion is to approve the MOU with the edit of a board.
Additional
You should read it back.
Yep.
It's approved with the addition of language that allows for discussion and review at a board meeting after the presentation to the administration and committees of the current, or what, the projects, with an understanding that time and materials will be above and beyond.
And that could, and with the understanding that this could affect the schedule. Correct?
Yes.
And could impact the schedule? Okay. All right.
That's essentially in the asterisk of the.
Yeah, I don't think we need that part yet.
It's right there. Yep.
Okay.
So do you have a first on a motion?
There's been a couple motions. Okay, I'm going to go with Joel made the motion, and I think Sherry seconded after he completed.
So
we'll
now
go-
that is the motion on the table to call the vote.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Okay. Ms. Kleiber?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Marhold?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Nay.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion carried.
I forget I'm the one. Sorry, I'm the one moving ahead here. Next item is new copiers. Is there a motion that the Board of Education approve the recommendation for new copiers as presented?
Second.
Margie, can you call the roll? Oh, discussion. Is there discussion on the copiers? Sorry, Don. I didn't want to. Thank you for all the detailed information. It was very full. Margie, you want to call the roll?
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber? Mr. Marhold?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Moving on, the FY 2018-19 preliminary budget discussion. Mr. Fitton, would you like to come
I'll
up?
just give a sort of brief, as part of the transition here. As the board in February, you heard kind of preliminary budget guidelines that were set forth at the Make How. There was a discussion of preliminary budget. So now here on July 18th, our goal is to really provide an opportunity for sort of examination, discussion about this preliminary budget, with an idea being that we would actually be seeking approval of a tentative budget at the April board meeting, because our requirement is to put it on display, or I'm sorry, did I say April? Yeah, August, I mean August. Because we are required to put it on public display, we need to put it on display August 16th to have 30 days before our September board meeting to approve it by the end of September, as is required. So I just want to give kind of people a sense of timeline and that you've been talking about this, but I know there's been sort of some gaps in some of the communication. So Jim has it well in hand, has been giving this scrutiny and communication and figuring things out with our team. So Jim, take it away now.
Well, thanks. I've spent my first few days meeting with principals and other department heads. Really want to make sure that their budgets are included in the tentative budget that we're working on for August. It'll include the summer projects, the capital, and the latest technology budget. Going to spend some time really reviewing the property taxes and revenue. And we're in the middle of negotiations, but we'll put our best estimate for salary and benefits using the latest information. So we'll come to you in August with a more detailed presentation, ask you to approve the tentative budget so we can post it. And we should be on track to approve the final budget in September and file it with the state by the October 15th deadline. Any questions? Thanks.
I have a question. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. You've essentially taken a couple of first looks at this budget. Is there anything that jumped out at you in that process, having only been here for a few weeks?
Not yet. It looks very reasonable. I want to spend some time tying all the detailed budget to the larger preliminary budget that you've seen a couple times. Mm-hmm. But it all looks similar to previous years, so I think I just need to understand it better and be able to talk in detail about it next time.
Fair enough. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to new business. Our one item under new business tonight is the Ames conceptual design consideration and discussion. So before Carrie and Matt come up to present, I just want to say on behalf of the Facilities Committee and the Ames Visioning Committee, it's really exciting. This is a really exciting night for us to be able to have our first step in like concrete conversation. And I just want everybody to remember that this is literally like the foundation level. We finally have something to talk about. If the public's watching and they're looking at this, these are not like designs we're debating 1, 2, and 3 and we're choosing next month. We are way earlier than that. So these are the first level of conversation. So I'm excited to see what you guys have. So come on up.
All right, well, I think most of you know me, but this is our Director of Design, Matt Lowe. So he and I tag teamed the visioning process that we went through with your visioning committee for, I believe it was 5 sessions. And through those 5 sessions, we really got to understand the needs of Ames. Now those sessions weren't really just us sitting down and asking the Ames staff, what do you need? And them telling us, well, 3 classrooms and a library or whatever. Actually, it was a lengthy process that we went through that derived information from several series of exercises and questions and actually even a design process that they went through at time. So, and what we gleaned from that, in summary, and I think you've seen this document as part of your board packet, was that they really want us to focus on a multi-purpose space, a dedicated space for eating lunch, which they currently do not have. They're sharing it with the gymnasium. Library, a dedicated library space with it currently is not existing. They're sharing it with orchestra, band. And then obviously completing the section school, so needing some classroom space, and then separating parking and play, because that overlap is pretty apparent at that school as well. There's many others in your district, but that is one for sure as well. And we're looking at Ames today, so that's what we're talking about. Along those lines, there's a lot of good stuff in that visioning packet. I hope you took time to take a look at it, because it really does begin to tell you why we have the detail that we do on the plans that Matt's going to go through in a little bit. So I want to ask if there are any questions related to that process, that document, and if there's anything else you want to share for that process. Because it really, we did spend a lot of time and energy trying to understand the needs of Ames. It's not just a simple process of adding classrooms onto this space. We have to understand how those spaces will help enhance what's happening today. So the plans that you're about to see are ideas for the use of those spaces. The terminology that exists there doesn't necessarily need to be that terminology. We will tell you about the totality of space that is being added to each plan so that you can comprehend that there is flexibility built into this plan. And that is obviously the intent here. Your school district must be very nimble in the future because you keep getting these issues that arise over and over again with your student capacity counts and oversized classrooms. So we need to provide some flexibility to you. And that's these solutions are about flexibility. The names on the spaces can be just about anything. And we're going to talk about what we're adding in the square footage to Ames and some options. They're not definitive options either. We can scale back, we can add on. The cost estimates that were included in the packet included big picture items. So if we were looking at separating the parking and the play or ideas for different parking areas, all those numbers are in there. They don't necessarily need to be. And so we can take a look at a certain dollar amount. If that's what we're trying to hit, then by all means we can do that. But that really just needs to be decided. The first exercise, and as you pointed out, Joel, this is kind of just a where are we at meeting right now, just to show you this was our first blush look at everything. And then we're going to go to refinement from here. So comments are great, and we've talked in the committee. The first time that you saw after we met in the committee, the drawings looked a certain way. We got comments in the committee. We continued to work on, and we added another option. Those documents were currently being worked on last Friday. You got a very live version of that. So you'll see that the parking looked different on here because it wasn't included yet. So it's important to note that this is an ongoing process. We don't want to lose any traction or time. So we're trying to move forward and stay on schedule, which I know is very important to you because you've articulated that several times. So with that, I just want you to understand that this is our process and it's constantly moving, it's constantly evolving, and we're here to discuss and give you an update and some context to what you've been looking at in your board packet.
Before you jump into the plans, you guys have both been through this visioning process 100 times.
Yes.
Was there anything unique about this specific visioning exercise?
Absolutely.
When compared to
Absolutely. In fact, we were doing this in tandem with another district, and I'd have to say the passion that was exuded from your staff at Ames was amazing. And I just don't say that as this is really good, you know. No, this was exceptional, and I do want to mention that because I think it speaks to the people that you have working in these buildings.
Exactly. A lot of great input, and having the cross-section of stakeholders that we had to talk to, I think represented told us a lot of insight into who you are, and that's what differentiates you between everyone else. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. So with that, we're going to jump into these plans. We've created kind of an overall summary sheet for you so that you can see the pros and cons of each concept, along with a total square footage of space that's being added to your building. We thought this might help you a little bit because there is a lot of information that we're going to cover. There are a lot of plans that you're going to see, and we're going to move through it a little bit more rapidly. And because we don't necessarily know how much of that detail you need to focus on here, but the sheets that we just handed out, I think are probably what you want to hear at a board level, which we'll go over as we go through the plans. Okay.
All right, so we have a lot to cover. Hopefully these help us just to follow through, to really highlight the pros and cons of each option. So looking at option one, it was really what can we do in a minimally invasive option to really achieve all of the priorities that we heard from the committee. So in this option, everything you see here in light tan is going to be basically existing to remain, per se, a light renovation, if anything, Anything that yellow color, gold color, would be more of a heavy renovation. And anything in the orange would be an addition to the existing building. So one of the challenges, of course, is the existing site, but how can we maximize the amount of outdoor space, which was one of the, as we looked at the future and asked the committee, in the future, what do you guys need? Flexibility was certainly one thing, but that connectivity to the outdoors, that safe play area was also a big priority here. So just going over some of the key attributes of the site here. So all this would be existing perimeter, but this is the addition over here to the east. And you'll see also that we're looking at the parking. How does the parking not interrupt the play area to create a safer play area? The square here was a kickball, which was one of the activities that the committee said that they'd like to have on a hard surface was that kickball play area. So we looked at some parking here, and at the very end of the presentation, we're going to look at different site options to even maximize parking more. But looking at the site itself, creating a one-way traffic flow here, which would be separated from the outdoor play area, so a safe play area. Over here, creating kind of a sheltered green soft play space, so children would have a connectivity to green and the real connections in life. So some of the major components here, we'll get into this next year. So everything in green here are your classrooms, learning studios, different terminologies here, but essentially these are the key learning spaces. Going back to the previous screen real quick, you'll see that a lot of those light tan spaces were not going to be remodeled. Classrooms are going to stay where they are in many applications. But some of the changes here in that renovated area, getting kindergarten classes to be larger in square footage. Currently, they're about 660 square feet, and for the number of kids in the space, that warrants a larger square footage per student. So trying to capture some space in this for larger kindergarten classrooms. But basically, moving, massaging different learning studios to fit into other areas that would best suit their needs. The other spaces we looked at here were shared spaces. So the addition space, you'd be capturing space for a new gymnasium. Now, one thing you'll notice on the site here is a setback line. This dashed line is a setback line. And, but in order to maximize the site, in the hardscape here, the outdoor play space, this could also be overflow parking here. But looking at an option where we gain a larger gymnasium space, the challenge here, which we'd have to work with the village, would be the setback here, which we're crossing.
And that setback is based on current zoning code?
Correct. Yes. Yes.
So that build would require a variance?
Any build
Exactly.
is going to require
Yeah.
a variance for you because it's a special use.
One thing this design does afford the community is a connection to the community through a common space, and so the community would also have easy access to use the gymnasium also. And you could separate that from the rest of the school if you need to. So on the first floor of the space here, it would be a dining. So where the gym currently is, you dedicate that space for dining. So gym gets relocated, becomes appropriate square footage for what you need. And we have additional spaces here. Some of those spaces we talked about in this concept, again, this is bare bones. Existing infrastructure will stay as much as possible. So the art and music still stay here on the first floor as kind of the spaces that are already functioning. So a way to really watch the impact of cost on this as well. One of the innovations of this concept, though, was to put a second story above the existing gym. So the multi-purpose would essentially be a single story, and you'd build above. And the space that you capture above would be a media center, some additional learning spaces. One thing we talked a lot about was maker spaces, spaces for creativity and imagination, making stuff. Other spaces here were, I believe, a learning studio and reading. Okay. Yeah. And then everything in purple you see here would be more itinerant specialty office spaces. That really rounds out, all the different needs. So all the existing needs for staff spaces are maintained in this option. But the big items that are gained is an additional kindergarten classroom, a dedicated sensory motor room, which currently is not accounted for in the existing plan, and you get an abundance of safe outdoor play area as well with this concept.
But looking at it just kind of as a little bit less labeled, if you will, we'll look at it as that you're going to attain 4 new large learning spaces. So I'm talking about classroom-sized spaces, right? So 4 new ones. I know it's hard to tell in that plan because we've manipulated space within the existing facility. If you go back to that first one, Matt.
So like here, use the example, like is it the sensory motor room? Is it things that are labeled that are also be a backup classroom?
So yes, let me just show you exactly what we're talking about. So when we add on, essentially we've created a floor above the gymnasium space. And when we add that on, we've added 1, 2, 3, 4 new spaces up there, right? One of them's a library, and these 3 are classroom sizes, right? Back here, down here, in lieu of that stage that you have right now, that's where we've added that sensory room, okay? Which is a very large space. Whether you choose to use it for that or something flexible in the future, that's completely up to you. So when I say that there are 4 large learning spaces, that's what I'm talking about. Those 4 spaces, not the library. And then a large open learning area, which is this common space, which can be used as, and which we're intending to be used as part of a functional corridor where you can house small groups or breakout space or whatever. That's what we're seeing today. And then also a dedicated multi-purpose room, so that's on the first floor, right? We're going to have that space for eating. And then a larger gymnasium, which is much bigger than what you have now. And a dedicated library space, which is this. And larger kindergarten rooms, because we renovated some spaces in here. These are 2 large kindergarten rooms. So that's what you achieve with this concept, which is a great deal of space, because in total, it's almost 14,000 square feet that we're adding onto your facility. But yet we did it within the context of your building, which is great because your site is so tight to begin with. That's the really cool part about this concept. We want the space implosion to maximize whatever you can within the walls of the great building that you have already, that's already designed within the context of your community, so we're saving money.
So I think that was a question that I heard, was this idea of it looks like we're adding a gym, which this is, but that really sort of evolved from this idea of taking that current gym because that became a valuable space to renovate.
Exactly. Right? And it also becomes, it's in that cluster of classroom space, right? So the location and the proximity of that space to the other learning areas makes a lot more sense functionally. And then bringing out the gymnasium out to the outer edge where it can be isolated as a community asset as well, and maybe a partnership with other entities within your community that could use that space for the future, seem to make a lot more sense. While it's not just so it's not necessarily a gym, it is a gym addition, but we're repurposing so much other space in your existing facility and gaining like almost 5,000 square feet right here, just above the gymnasium by building that second floor, which is just it's a really good investment. We've done this a lot with older buildings, and that it's really helped a lot, and it saves money, and it's very functional. So that's the essence of this option 1A.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
What happens to the stage space that would become sensory motor space? Where would those kind of activities happen?
Yeah, so that space would get integrated into that new gymnasium space. So
new stage.
There would be a new stage space, so that would be a large...
Is that why there's the extension on the
Exactly,
north
yeah.
side?
So there would be a platform space there perhaps, or a elevated space for kids to perform. Mm-hmm. And it was chosen to be in that large space to really maximize the community that could really be part of those events and activities. You know, one thing we didn't talk about leading up to this, the visiting sessions are very valuable for us, touring other educational facilities. And one thing that we talked a lot about was that the school should be a place where learning can happen anywhere and everywhere. So how do you maximize spaces and how do you create spaces that allow for differentiated learning and different learning styles? And so some space we talked about were small breakout rooms, and can learning happen in the corridors? Can circulation be a learning space too? And how effective can you make the classroom setting in terms of flexibility and different ways that students are working with each other, whether peer-to-peer, individual, or in large groups? So one of the things, just hitting the pros and cons of each option. In this option, one thing we weren't able to get were like small breakout rooms that may be shared between classrooms or in a cohort, so kids can be pulled out. It certainly can happen in the classroom, but also by not maximizing the square footage of those learning spaces, some of the existing classrooms in 21st century standards are small, and as your enrollment has grown over the years, you've experienced those challenges. So just want to make note of that.
And one thing else I want to add to this as well, that tan area that Matt discussed was being maybe a light renovation. And I have an allowance almost as line item for aesthetic improvements, really, to kind of give some wayfinding information and maybe a little bit more identity to your existing facilities to bring them a little bit more forward, because if we add on and do renovation bits and pieces here and there, really we want to make this building look as a whole, internal as well as external. So that's a very important piece of this as well, to connect everything together and bring that really a little bit more, some more modernization up to it. Just little things, not anything extensive, but just maybe that's with some furniture, some paint, maybe flooring, those types of things.
Yeah, one thing the committee said was inspiration and connectivity to real and virtual, so bringing nature and biophilia. So this was option 1A, and then this is basically a massing this year from the southeast on the left, and then the northwest on the other side. So get an idea of these volumes, how they work. Option 1B was a result from the last meeting that we had, and we wanted to take a look at, well, what happens if we don't forgo the setback? What if we keep the gym right where it is, and the addition space becomes a dining space, and that's how you capture additional space. So square footage wise, these are very similar. You can still see that there's a lot of light renovation here. Pretty comparable, actually, in terms of a lot of the things we talked about before. But one thing that happened in here, by keeping all the classrooms, or most of the classrooms, in the same position as they were are existing, a priority is to get core classrooms and art classrooms and music with exterior windows. We know the benefits of natural light and views for children, that when they have more natural light, they perform better. So in this option, we did look at moving classrooms, getting the art room out of an interior space and moving it into an exterior wall. And all first to fifth grade, kindergarten through fifth grade would have a direct view to the outside in natural light. So basically the cohort green classroom arrangement, still keeping them together, and the dark green would be the upper grade levels, reading off the media center. So media center on the second floor. On the ground floor would be, go to the next slide here, these shared spaces. You have dining, you'd have a common space here. So still a community connectivity space that there's direct access to a community space from the street. Art would be relocated into an addition, so really maximizing that, getting the square footage what it needs to be for the activities that are held in art. There would be a kiln and a storage room for those spaces. The space that was art was repurposed. Music would remain, and still with natural light. Gym, as we said before, stays where it is, in that stage area, would stay as is. Creating opportunities in the corridors for hubs and breakouts to happen. And the purple would still be those itinerant spaces, the specialty offices, student support, professional development spaces. So where the bleachers were located, the stadium seating, those would be renovated into small learning spaces. And through the removal of those bleachers, you also get a slightly larger gymnasium space, so a larger activity space.
So again, the total gains for this concept, 13,000 square feet, so slightly less than the previous one, but it does stay within that setback, so it might be a little bit more palatable to the community or the village. And instead of 4, we get 3 large learning spaces, 1 large open learning area, like Matt talked about, and then a dedicated multi-purpose room, a dedicated gymnasium, was slightly larger than the original by removing those bleachers, a dedicated library, and a larger kindergarten classrooms. Any questions?
Can you explain that last part you just mentioned about removing the bleachers
Yes.
to the gym? I think there's a different document I saw that talked about it. The current gym doesn't meet program requirements or something along those lines. Could you shed a little bit more light on that, of what the plans were for that gym?
Just aside from moving the bleachers out of there because they don't really get utilized that much and they're taking up a great deal of space right now. So getting them out and creating more of a larger environment for use for the staff and the PE program that exists.
So like replacing them with like pull-out bleachers or something, or?
That's up for discussion. Is really to create more floor area space
For play.
for play activities, and
If there's an event, there would be chairs set up.
there certainly could be retractable. It would be a good discussion to have. So
Again, there's not a lot of detail to these plans at this point in time. There's just a concept that's being put on paper. So the idea is to a lot of the topics that we discussed, that an issue came up where the gym was not large enough.
There's one question I have. I know like when the condos, there's no breakout rooms. I guess of the cons, where does that fall? Is that sort of something that's just an annoyance, or is that really a major issue? I mean, I'm looking, so I guess.
Well, I think it's a major issue that people don't have space and they're meeting on a stage sometimes to do some of these functions. I'm sure Todd can tell you a little bit better, but.
Yeah, like our occupational therapists or physical therapists, they actually service students on the stage, which is, of course, with 1 or 2 adults up there, those are the moments where you really realize you need space because it is not the safest place to service students with special needs. And it was only for a short period of time before we had to create additional space for that.
Okay.
So there's also a speech pathologist that shares an office with a social worker, so they're each other in their office to service students who are getting displaced all the time. We have a master schedule of all these different ones and what space is available, and it might be a closet, a desk and stuff.
But this 1B does add some of those spaces, some of those for the specials.
Yeah, there's not itinerant space.
all the itinerant specials have been accounted for in the options. Yes, correct.
So the breakout space per grade level, the way I understand it, is that idea of like a first grade team would sort of have a space
That's what I'm
maybe in
referring
between
to,
their
right?
classrooms.
I'm not referring to like the special.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sort of. Yeah, no, that's what I was referring to. Is like not like more the special.
Sure, yes, absolutely.
So much more space for adults, really, or adults having meetings, or adults, I guess, in terms of meetings with kids, but.
We'll pull out for
something like it's not like kids are going to have a breakout session or something.
They could.
No, we do. I mean, we have, for instance, like 2nd grade does a science fair each year. So I'm just doing this so I can. 2nd grade has a science fair, and we had to try to find a space, that didn't interfere with lunch, didn't interfere with PE classes. So when grade levels get together, when you have a 3-section school, where can all those kids come for, meet to actually present their science projects and have parents come in as well? So it not only meets the needs of students, it meets the needs of families coming in too. So there's collaboration all the time across grade levels, where you will see in one third grade classroom, they will get all 60 kids in that classroom because they want to do a unit together. And that might, you can only sustain that for maybe 45 minutes before it's so tight in there. Where can we have that common space where third grade could say, hey, Todd, we want to check this out, and we want to, sign up to use that space, and, it's affordable to all kids and teachers, and invite in the parents as well.
So is the idea that the multi-purpose space covers some of that?
Yeah.
Well, the idea that the multipurpose space would cover, maybe band and orchestra,
exactly,
overlap, so that we get it out of the library.
Yeah.
And then since it's a dedicated space for multipurpose. The idea is to create flexibility, right? So we're putting labels on things, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that. And I know it's hard to understand exactly all the flexibility that we're building in, which is why we're taking the time to outline it at the bottom of these highlight pages, because it's all designed integral, right? Because education is that way. We can't just look at the building and say, all right, 4 classrooms here, because we have to figure out how it works with the rest of the facility, and that's really important. And so that's the process that we went through. So I hope that answered your
question. I think in the cons where it says no breakout space for grade level, like in the visioning committee, I know that was something as we toured another school that was very well received by the staff, where there would be, like for 3 classrooms, there would be kind of a small space that's attached to all of them that almost had like glass walls where that could be used for any of the classes. I think it's I'm not an architect or an educator, but like a 21st century type of group breakout learning. And so I think that's what it's talking about there, because in these designs it does have a commons area, it has a enlarged media center, it has the multi-purpose room. So there are larger group spaces that Todd was mentioning.
And that's why I'm sort of like those spaces you're talking about. How big of how major of a con is that? Is it like a more of an annoyance, or is that something that students, teachers really want and need?
Well, they definitely want and need them. They've been taken away from to add to different needs from the capacity issues of the building. So at one point in time, the great part about this particular building is that those were all built into the architecture of the facility. And then slowly but surely they've been taken away to be dedicated to other functions that were needed, and for the fact that there are more students and more like psychiatrists, psychologists.
I think the biggest loss is when we took our multi-purpose room and made it into the new art and music room. That used to be the lunchroom, so that would serve lunch for 1 hour a day, and the remaining portion of the day, teachers could go in there with their classes. So you can have an entire grade level in the multi-purpose room. Once we repurposed that to be the art and music room, we lost a huge common space. So we don't have any common space anymore, other than if Mr. Bartell is over at Blythe Park for PE, we might be able to use the gym, but we can't use the gym at certain times because of lunch, and Mr. Bosco has to break down the tables. I mean, what we're doing is we're trying to get a space back that no longer exists, that we lost last year. And under our current infrastructure, it's not there.
Yeah, as Carrie said, the original Ames Elementary, they had these breakout rooms here that were shared by these classrooms, and it very forward-thinking, especially when this was designed originally. And really, with 21st century learning, a lot of these spaces are something that are really supporting the skills that we're talking about here and for the 21st century. And those guiding principles of accountability that the steering team felt were very important. So option 1B, the massing here, again, you can see the setbacks. We're able to make that multi-purpose work because unlike a gym, we don't have the constraints of playing courts to work around. So any questions on 1B? Any other questions?
I guess an overall general comment, and this seems to be in common with all the plans, they all seem to be moving parking out of the parking lot and onto the street. And I guess I wonder about the viability of that, or how much involvement from the village is required for something like that.
Oh, triangles. I was really concerned to see that triangle use.
Yeah, we had to show you every option that we could possibly think of dealing with the site that you have currently. Ideally, it'd be great if you had another piece of property that could explore and expand upon parking for Ames. Currently, you don't. So it's one or the other. So we could choose to not deal with any of it and leave it as is, or we could look at some ways to solve it, and the only way we had of solving it was to remove the parking from that. Actually, it's not the only way, because as Matt pointed out earlier, we kept that one lane with some parking associated with just kind of restricting it, right, and keeping it alongside the property line as opposed to within the field of play.
I'm not fully educated on the Olmsted vision, but isn't the design of the triangle part of the Olmsted vision?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be what you might call an unsurmountable obstacle?
It will be. Yeah, absolutely.
But you decided to include it?
But again, as we talked about in design in our process, that we have to think of every solution, even though that might not be a viable solution for your community. Although, is the idea of a preserved triangle more important than safety? I would
You
argue.
left us the village.
Yeah. So again, we're not here to comment on the right or wrong of that. We're just showing you options of what there are available. What are your options for solving this problem?
The minimum parking count we're trying to achieve is 44, and we're not hitting 44 here. So for staff parking, for visitor parking, so now looking at ways, as you guys mentioned, the safety of the kids for a safe play area. Sure, we can make this all parking and get all of our needs met, but now we've lost all play area, safe play area for the kids, or reduced it substantially.
Safe area on the hard surface.
Correct. A gated area, which would be fenced off from the drive. So it's secure in that respect.
For reference, just offhand, the existing facility accommodates 44 vehicles, or that's just what the amount of parking
there is
that
absolutely
you need?
no way to count that other than just counting the cars that are in the lot, because it's certainly not set up to standards of what you would expect, and that's obviously an issue as well. So basically they can't go in their car, you can't remove the car when there's children at play.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But so we'd have to look at an aerial just to figure out how much it currently
I
accommodates.
think we're estimating about 30 to 32 spaces. If you look at our play area where the teachers park along with
Thank you. That's
so
what I
it's
was.
roughly 30 to 33.
Okay. So
One thing we're trying to achieve with these designs as well, though, is that for off-peak hours, maybe community events, that this could become overflow parking for parents, for community members. So you will see gates at the two ends here, so overflow could be achieved here, just to try to maximize that parking.
For events.
For events, yeah. So, any other questions on 1B before we move on, or? Okay, so the next option is option 2 here, and so again, you're starting to see a little bit less of the tan space, perhaps light renovation. We're getting more addition space here. The heavy renovation in this existing gym area again. So, but percentage of the breakdowns here for how that works. The big thing here is that so all these classrooms remain the same square footage, but given the fact that the existing classrooms are 50 to 150 square feet short of what we're seeing as national standards for the learning space for this age group, looking at designing new classrooms in the new addition that would meet what your peak enrollment would be. So you have flexibility. Let's say you have a cohort one year that maxes out. It's 10, 20 kids more than what another grade is. It gives you flexibility that you can use larger size classrooms to meet that need. This light blue, so every cohort would get a breakout room too. So you'll start seeing these breakout rooms in the scheme. On the first floor would be kindergarten. So those tend to require more square footage because of the way the instruction takes place. But easy accessibility for the young kids to safely come in and have their area here. And on the upper floor would be perhaps upper grade cohorts, but these would be sized appropriately for maximum enrollment. One thing you'll see is the introduction of learning hubs, what are called learning hubs or learning neighborhoods, which are basically large open learning areas that are adjacent to the cohorts. So a place for a differentiated instruction that may be different than what you can carry out in a typical classroom or learning studio setting. And other key spaces here, the gymnasium would remain with the removal of those bleachers like we talked about earlier. And then a common space, this would be a multi-purpose room. So basically you're achieving all of your community spaces in one area here. With the academic wing, you're still meeting your setbacks here. But here you have your large community spaces, gymnasium, a common area, and a dining function all in the same vicinity. We also see shared spaces, music room, sized more appropriately with the storage needs that they need, the breakout for small group band instruction. Art is relocated to adjacent windows, so you're keeping art and music together. We talked a lot about different priorities, and we had different teams, and we saw a lot of common trends with the design charrette, and keeping some of those fine art spaces together, like music and art, were very important. So that's one thing this plan achieves. On the second floor, above the dining and the commons area, would be a media center, a maker space, and those are the big shared functions here. And then distributing student support spaces, especially resource, professional development throughout the entire school. So all the service providers are accounted for. Anything else, Carrie, that you want to add?
Yeah, we're going to add 21,700 square feet to this facility, to this building, and this concept. Just quite a big increase of square footage. 5 large learning spaces, 9 small learning spaces, so those breakout rooms that we talked about, they get incorporated here the way they're needed to be. And then 3 large open learning hubs that Matt talked about. And then a dedicated multi-purpose room, dedicated gymnasium that's slightly larger, dedicated library, and larger kindergarten classrooms and upper grade levels. So you can start to see how all these concepts start to compare to each other, right? And what you're getting for the square footage is obviously a great deal more.
The biggest impact on the site, as you can see here with the massing studies, that's that northern playground area, so that hardscaped area does get cut down quite a bit. And the site to the east there, still all the schemes, they remain about the same. There are opportunities here too for creating even green roof opportunities, so outdoor learning, safe spaces for the kids. That would be off that shared learning hub. So how do you maximize every green opportunity, whether it could be on a rooftop or actually on the ground itself? Any questions on option 2?
So one thing I see, and I've seen this in other plans as well, so there's a room called broadcast?
Right. So basically what that would be is a green screen room for students to do student recordings, perhaps school broadcasts where they could have a green screen space. In previous options, we looked at ways, how do we incorporate that kind of space throughout the corridor? So it could be simply having a green screen wall within a corridor space. So it could be a pull-out space like that. This looks at a dedicated space where it could be part of that maker space environment. So kids are making recordings, and they can, use the digital realm to, it's more of a dedicated space just for that, which may be more sound isolated versus the other scenario where you may have more of the ambient sound of the public spaces you're in. But it's a space to record for video recording.
All functions that we talked about in the visioning meetings.
Right. And part of that maker space kind of movement that kids are
You mentioned
making.
maker space as well, so I guess I don't know, craft room?
It's a craft room. It's a place for imagination.
A suggestion for future drawings. So some of this terminology, I'm not in education. And it took me a while until I asked my wife, who is in education, who I said, what on earth is a media center?
Yeah.
And it's a library.
Yeah. Right.
Again, it changed my outlook on the room tremendously when I called it a library rather than a media center.
It was like a movie theater, right?
I had no idea. What is a media center?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit less
jargon in future drawings might be a good thing. But in another part here, I don't see comments on this option.
Comments?
Yeah, I guess we had comments in other
The comment
areas.
space, yes, would be on the first floor. Is the link?
Okay, I'm sorry. There it was. There it is.
Yeah, link between dining and the.
I guess what is that comparable to something that we have now? Is that like the space outside of the auditorium in Hauser, or what is that?
What we don't have.
You don't
right?
have what we don't have.
No, I'm not sure that's a problem.
So I think that really speaks to like what Mr. Guerrero was saying, like where the whole second grade team wants to work on science projects together in preparation for science fair. Like a commons area, something where like I see is where a grade level team might congregate for a project for shared. A speaker comes in, it's just for.
I mean, it's our multi-purpose room that we repurpose for art and music. So that would be, we'd be getting a common area back, a large space for construction.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And something I see brought up on several points as well, they talk about the art area does not have a kiln.
Right, in this option, no, it doesn't.
So I think there's only one that has that, or?
There's two.
There'll be two.
There are two.
I think it's option 1B and then option 3.
So I guess my question is,
Yes.
are there any other places within District 96 that have a kiln?
Hauser has a kiln, and Meryl helped me out here with.
Ames currently has a kiln.
Yes, Ames does have a kiln.
So we'd have to figure out where that's one of the questions I asked when I first looked at these.
Right.
We'd have to figure out where that existing kiln is going to go. So we currently have a kiln in
So it's currently at Ames, okay, you have one currently there.
It's just the art lab moved from away from it, and so the kiln was not able to go in. Again,
Yeah, exactly.
it's really preliminary, so we can find a home for the kiln.
Kiln is not huge. The kiln probably needs special venting.
It requires special venting, yeah.
I learned it's not huge.
No, it's small.
Yeah, like size of a grill.
It's this big around.
Yeah.
Anything else?
So we outlined it as a kickball field for a hard surface athletic area, and realizing that we have all the other schools right now, we have the parking lots, they're athletic fields at the same time, which we say is not ideal. I'm trying to get my brain around a hard surface athletic area when we don't have a parking lot on top of it. I guess what are we using that for? Why do we have a hard surface athletic area? Is there something that can be done there that I'm just not thinking of right now?
As far as why you would have hard surface versus grass?
Yes.
Oh, for inclement weather and all
Foursquare.
Different activities.
Every other, yeah. There's
So a lot of activities that the kids do currently that we're requesting. Kickball, Foursquare.
Real quick, the problem out here that exists with the ball field is that they can't use it. When it rains, when it rained 3 days before, 4 days before,
What kind of material is that?
The grass out here?
No, the hard surface here.
Oh, asphalt. It could be asphalt, but I mean, it could be anything, right? It could be soft play surface. It could be whatever we want it to be if we don't have to park on it.
Right. The parking becomes kind of, yeah.
But if we're going to make it flexible so that it can be overflow parking for events, then asphalt would be a natural.
If parking's not required, then it could be a multitude of, rubberized surfaces, whatever,
We tend to see school playgrounds that have a combination. I think,
Right.
Dan, if that's your question, that kids want to play on grass,
Exactly.
playground equipment, and also hard surface. There's certain games that they really, they don't want to be just on hard surface. It's nice to have the grassy option, but you don't want to eliminate usually the hard surface option.
Which Blythe has currently because they have access to the adjacent park.
Yeah.
So they have hard surface and grassy park.
I think my commute through a park in Berwyn, most schoolyards you pass are sort of almost like an adjacent and adjoining blacktop grass, so kids can do both. And you can supervise both, that's the other.
Yeah, that is the unfortunate part of the dynamic of the site, which we have not spoken about. I really would like to talk about that. The way that this is configured, you can see this is the back of the building, and this is where they play and park right now. And then this is a lot, and this is the lot that you purchased. So observation for when there's recess or for outdoor play, this is the playground. and some soft area, and then this is the hard surface. And there's literally about 3 feet of space between it and the property line right here. So it's kind of hard to oversee that, and that came out of those visioning meetings as well. So just want to make you aware of some of the obstacles there too. So that's really important to note. Let's move on to the next one.
Sure. Okay. So this is option 3. Here, this was a blue sky option. So what if everything that came from these visioning sessions could really happen? So in this option, we'd see all the classrooms be the appropriate square footage of what we would design if this were to be a new school in a blue sky. How big should these spaces be for flexibility of learning and for all the experiences and activities that the kids are doing? This would have all the project spaces, the breakout rooms, the maker spaces, based on their appropriate square footages. So here you see the lightest number is going to be the light renovation, a lot of heavy walls coming down to achieve those expansions of the classrooms to get to the size, and then the addition spaces. So here, I'll go through the breakdown. So classroom-wise, in the addition here, we'd get a cohort, kind of in the center of these. So every cohort, I didn't say this before, every cohort has 3 classrooms. So kindergarten through 5th would each have 3 classrooms. So at the heart of these 2 would be a project space here. And then basically we have, so the remainder would be the dark green, all the upper cohorts, and then the primary over here. Additional space here was a reading room. So in this option, we looked at infilling, again, the existing gym to really maximize the square footage. So the ground floor would be the dining multi-purpose space, that sensory motor. Up above would be a media center with a,
It's all right, I got the conversion
maker
now.
space and and then the gymnasium space would be on the first floor, of course. Again, that community entrance here, that commons area, shared. Music would still be in the same area where it currently is, but to the appropriate size of what you need for the activities and functions, and with all the required breakout storage needs. We talked about those shared learning hubs. So here on the first floor and the second floor, this space here is actually just a covered area. It was a space that was created by the required program, but it creates a safe space for kids who need cover, perhaps inclement weather, or for a queuing space before or after school, a safe place for them to get out of inclement conditions. These would be the itinerant spaces, the specialty support resource rooms. And again, this is maximizing really the building on the site, so at the cost of outdoor play space, obviously, but to try to maximize the program spaces and offerings of the architecture to support your learning. So
Well, that's the largest addition space that we have, 25,000 square feet. It's also the most costly one. 7 large learning spaces, 5 small learning spaces, 3 large open learning hub areas, a dedicated multipurpose room, dedicated gymnasium, dedicated library, and then all classrooms are sized to meet the maximum enrollment. So they're all large classrooms, which is completely different, transforming the existing facility completely.
So thank you for noting how option 3 came about, and where the thought process was that drove that, because that was a confusion on my part.
I have one question, just sort of all the plans I see, they sort of follow the same, like building off to one side and going out in the other way. Now I understand, now I'm not an architect, so take this, but I understand if is there a reason that we couldn't like maybe put some classrooms on the inside? I know we would lose sunlight or open concept. Is there a reason that we didn't do that so that we could possibly have like a more, I guess, I don't know, inclusive might not be but like a play area of both grass and concrete for kids? so that there would be sort of talking about that supervision issue.
Oh,
Since
speaking
it's like 3 feet to go down, kids aren't going to be able to go between those two
So
spaces.
you're probably looking at an expansion that would solely maybe go out this way, right?
Or something, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, or one way or the other.
Right.
Just to maximize.
Following the guidelines of the visioning process,
Yeah.
they were adamant about not having natural daylight
Okay.
in all the
Right.
classrooms.
Yeah.
There are currently
One room, one class.
two class.
There's one general education class.
Yes.
In 4th grade that does not have access to natural light.
Right.
And that was a big point of discussion, so that's why we kept that. We also agree with that logic, and there's surveys that are done. And
No, I mean, I don't like windowless office, but, you know.
Yes, I understand. Yeah.
But I was just sort of wondering if there was like, so.
There's also several itinerant spaces that do not have natural light as well, such as a reading specialist, math specialist, special educators. So there's many of those small spaces that don't have access to light, natural light. There's lights in the room.
And in conjunction with this, we put together some preliminary cost estimates. It's really just to give you an idea of what this might cost today, right? It's not an absolute. Obviously, if we pick pieces of each concept and put them together in a different concept or eliminate some, if we don't deal with parking and move it off-site, then there's no cost associated with that. So these are the types of things, but we tried to be all-inclusive in the cost estimates and even put an escalation factor in there for future, because we don't know when this is going to be built. And I think that's very important to understand, because it could happen 2 years from now. And what happens 2 years from now in the economy, I don't know. And we talked about that last time I was here. So just contingencies are exactly that. They're contingencies. They're not absolute. If you want a specific dollar amount that we need to design to, please tell us, and we will be happy to accommodate a design for that.
I guess there's one question that I know Jeff brought up to me is like, I know this is like the construction costs, and so do you guys have an idea of like what it would cost percentage-wise to like fill that building then? Like desks, chairs, like once the construction's built, once we put something new in?
Well, it depends on the concept and what square
Right.
footage we put in there. So
But I guess is there like,
we can
because I know
get-
there's like, I guess there's a contingency of 20 to 30%. I guess, is there a contingency for like furnishings of like maybe 20%, 25%? I mean, is that just so that we can?
We can give you a budget for that once we figure out how big the addition needs
Okay.
to be. So it's, right, yeah, we can help you with that. And, you know, it depends what you're.
Oh, right, no, I understand. I was just
There's
wondering if there was like some sort of formula depending, like, you put
We've
in.
got lots of formulas for figuring out furniture. trust me.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, furniture companies do too. They can go online and plug it in and get one.
Right.
But it is definitely dependent upon the type of furniture you select and.
Oh, right, no, I understand, right.
Yeah.
So to be clear, with that in mind, the cost estimates that we have here are not all-in costs. They
Right, I
are-
put at the bottom that it's
There's a
definitely asbestos
significant-
abatement and construction testing. Now, those things might be able to be included in the contingencies later on as we refine this and go a little bit further in. The important thing to note about estimates is that we are at a very conceptual stage right now, so we want to, it's very generic, very loose, they're based on square footage, historical data. And as we get closer to a more refined design, as we move into different phases and into construction documents, we will become absolutely more closely budgeted, and the contingencies will lessen.
But that's also when it's harder to make big changes that cause big ups or downs in costs as well.
Absolutely.
So this is the time to start making some of those big cost decisions that really do affect.
Absolutely.
We did float upward though significantly from the initial estimates that we were talking about. So,
I'm sorry.
so we did float upward on these estimates that we had.
Upward from what?
I'm trying to think of the previous document that we'd seen, but I do remember a floor of 5 at one point we were talking about.
We had discussed that, I don't know.
I never submitted a cost estimate. I never submitted a cost estimate other
That
than
was just
this.
something that the board was talking about.
Okay. No, I thought that was from information with participation from the architects. Yeah, I thought so too.
At the time of our presentation to the committee, I had done some quick calculations just off the top of my head the night before, and talking about the building only. building only hasn't changed.
So
I don't know what context that was in, but
I guess the thing is, I understand. I mean, not that I have a lot of experience, but I've done this. It's like this is going to be an iterative process. We're going to go through, and numbers are going to fluctuate up and down.
Sure.
And what was said, like maybe 6 months ago, what's said tonight, this is going to change again when we finally say, okay, this is what we want, and it's going to get more concrete. So, I mean, I understand this is going to. I mean, I understand your point, Dan, but I guess the thing is, I think we just need to be.
I get it.
So, one thing I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit, and I think Jeff had mentioned this. So, we have 4 elementary schools. Ames is one of them, and so a lot of these designs have parts that I would say that are like, of course, great, but maybe like want to have over need to have a little bit. Just in the sense of like, can we create one elementary school that has a lot of these spaces and then have 3 others that don't? So as we're going through this, I want to think about like the decisions we make. I think we have to think about if we're going to be implementing them in other schools. So while I love the small breakout rooms, is that a necessity, or is that like, and this is something I obviously would want community input, your input, everybody's input on, like, I have like a list of things where it's kind of like, is it good to have 5 large learning areas, or is 2 large learning areas really good, would really suit us? Because we could probably find 2 large learning spaces in other schools that need it. I don't know if one section schools need large learning spaces because there's one section in the classroom's a large learning space, but the other. So I kind of been looking at it through this lens, like what is something that we could replicate? I mean, I certainly think we need to improve the efficiency and the use and the way our rooms flow, and we need more common areas. I just don't know, like, one is like has an additional 1 and then another one has an additional 5. So like, where are we at? I think as a board and as a community, we need to think about that a little bit, because.
Right, that's where I was sort of going with those cons. It's like, how big is that? If we don't have that space, is that? Because I'm sort of looking at what we do here, I do think we need to have some parity across the rest of the schools here.
I do think we have to keep that in mind, definitely, as we're moving forward. Because, I mean, talk about when we have enrollment issues, everybody wants to go to Ames because it's like fantastic.
I know 2 people.
Believe me, I'm just saying, but I do think like we need to, be responsible in the way we're planning this, because I do think all 4 of our schools, elementary and probably our junior high, yes it does, has some space constraints and some issues that I think need to be addressed. So I want to make sure we're doing it thoughtfully across the board.
We do have to consider this in the context of every property that District 96 has. This isn't just a.
And I know, Carrie, you in the beginning were like, it's hard to just talk about one project. Your whole, the whole district is a project, and so I think we need to keep that in mind.
That's right.
Yes.
But I'm really excited to see the things that can be done. I mean,
and I appreciate the gym, because when I saw the gym, I was thinking, new gym, I was thinking, but now it makes sense that we're getting a new gym because we want to do this other space.
Yeah.
Makes more sense to me.
I think it represents a lot of great work by DLA, by the Visioning Committee, by the Facility Committee. A ton of hours of volunteer time, early mornings, that everybody came in on Facility Advisory Committee. So it feels to me like we're presented with a lot of options here, clearly, which is what we asked for. Not just one path, but several paths that we could consider. And you laid it out as a menu, which is really good for us as well. I personally look at it with my lens as one board member, and I see bits and pieces of every one that I like. I see bits and pieces of every one that I think are non-starters, such as the parking. Out in the park, I'm not interested in having the villagers show up on my doorstep with pitchforks and torches. So,
oh my gosh.
That's something for me personally that I wouldn't advocate moving forward with, but I'd rather look at it as, for this board, as we have to challenge ourselves to solve that parking problem that DLA has identified.
you've seen them in all the other instances.
Yes.
So necessarily don't need to cover those again.
So, people need time to digest. You know, what's...
Yeah, so what are the next
Yeah,
steps?
what's your recommendation on...
We are on your timeline.
Yeah.
So whatever time you need to take in order to do this, to think it out a little bit more, to have further discussion, that is up to you. We are at a point where we need some input back, and I think we can be on hold for a moment so that...
Should we maybe schedule like this as a agenda item on the next finance?
I think,
or, you know.
So we
like-
don't have an August cow schedule.
Okay.
I mean, we could schedule a special meeting if we thought we needed sort of a 2-week, time frame from now to meet. Otherwise, we could certainly put it on the August 15th meeting.
that would be our next meeting. And I think it's important to keep it on the front end of the agenda. And it feels to me that we should boil it down to a list of priorities from the board, a consensus from the board on priorities of what we have seen here.
Well, and also, did I interrupt?
No, go ahead, Joel.
Now that this is out and available to the public, we're in a slope, people are on vacations, give everybody a chance to see this, hear about it through the grapevine, and give their input as well. Not that every input is great, but there's going to be some reactions to all of this.
As long as Bob doesn't print in the paper that we've like agreed to park in the triangle or something like that. This is all just idea generating and nobody's attached to anything.
We're keeping Rich's.
Yeah, I can just see an article saying the board wants to do this. No, I'm just saying, I just want everybody, to remain on the same page that this is just the first level of ideas and we're going to move forward and refine. And hopefully the community will give us their input of what they want and what resonates with them and what doesn't. Because I think that's important.
It's their money.
Yeah. So what I would like to do is the next.
What kind of experience do they want?
What I would like to do as the next step is whatever our next meeting is, make sure it's on there. Let's have a discussion about.
Yeah, for sure.
After we've sat on it for thought through it a little bit, digest to the. Yeah. To like. Great.
And this does give some time for each of us to receive public comment.
Yeah.
It's, now it's out for public view. People can look it up on Board Book and tell us what they think.
And please email or call or, if you want to hear.
Bob can see that.
What are you guys writing these articles for me?
No, I always say. Sorry, Bob. You do a wonderful job.
Take another photo of you as president.
So are there any other comments or discussion?
No, Carrie, thank you for this. I think noting that this was driven by the needs and desires of the committee and more looking at the space without any hard and fast budget lines is another way to understand it as well. And that. Thank you.
Thank you. Make those decisions.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
I don't know. Oh, thank you. So next on the agenda is a public comment. Is there any other people who want to give a public comment? No? All right. Do I read the future meeting dates now if we're going back?
Yes, he does.
If we're going back into close, I won't do it later. Okay. All right. Future meeting dates are it is not August 1st, 2018. That committee of the whole has been canceled. So the next future meeting date is August 5th, 2018.
15th.
August 15th, 2018, regular business meeting, 7 p.m. in the Hauser Learning Resource Center, or Media Center, as we learned. September 5th, 2018, Committee of the Whole meeting, 7 p.m. in the Blythe Park Multipurpose Room. September 19th, 2018, regular business meeting, 7 p.m. in the Hauser Learning Resource Center. And I need to go back to this one. Now the board, I have to say, is there a motion for the board to enter into closed session for the purpose of discussing the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the district, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired, litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular district has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the district finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the closed meeting minutes, or collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees.
So moved. Second.
Margie, will you call the roll? Call.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Marhold?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Motion carried.
And there'll be no action taken after the closed session.